Hi, it's Therese and I'm here for Altenew, and this is a take two with Therese. It's a new feature that I'm doing with Altenew, and what I thought I'd do today was watercolor in two ways. So I've got this stamp set which is called Always There, and it is a layering stamp set, but I'm just going to be using the outlined flower images and watercoloring them. Now, the two ways that I want to watercolor, I want to use the watercolor brush markers. So this is the Spring Garden set, and I'm also going to be using the watercolor. It's a 36 half pans that were released a little bit earlier this year. Now I've already stamped my images out, and I have used the permanent black ink, and the reason why I have already stamped them out is because if I'm going to be doing watercoloring, I need to let them dry for at least 20 minutes. I'm also going to be using the medium-sized watercolor brush. This holds the water in the barrel, and Altenew have 3 different sizes of these, and I've got some paper towel too. So what I think is one of the best things about the watercolor brush markers is that you can just paint directly with them onto your cardstock. Now, one of the tricks is to make sure you use a cardstock that will help you blend those colors. So what I've got here is the Bristol Smooth cardstock, and that gives you plenty of time to mix your colors. I'm doing that on the actual petals as I'm painting them, and then what I like to do is to come in with my water brush and dilute it out and actually get the petals, get my gradient of color that way. You don't have to mix it with water. You can actually just paint directly on the cardstock with the water brush markers. It depends how vibrant you want the color. Now these brushes just clean off. You can squeeze the barrel and push some water out and wipe it on paper towel, or you can also use it in a water well. It's like any sort of watercoloring. You should avoid coloring areas that are directly beside where you've colored previously. Although I do find that the water brush markers tend to dry a lot quicker than watercolor paints. Because they don't like to move as much, I do work in smaller areas, so I will usually just do a petal at a time. Now the two colors I've used here on the flowers are the Midnight Violet and the Dusk. So the Dusk is actually a dark blue, and that's what I'm using for my shadow color. So that's the color that I'm putting right in against the stamen of the flower, because it's the center of the flower and that's where the shadows are going to be. There is also going to be shadows in the folds of the petals as well, but it's watercolor. It is meant to look a little bit loose, and I also like to leave some white areas as well, and I'll just do that by not moving the paint in that certain area. So I've used the moss and limeade for the leaves, and there are 2 different leaf sizes in this set. I just came in with the moss on the bigger leaf. I just came in with the moss and added it to the center, and then actually used the limeade marker. You won't contaminate the markers by mixing them on the cardstock like this. You can simply just clean them off by painting them off on a piece of cardstock, or like I'm doing here on the paper towel on the side. The other way that I did the leaves, I was going to say flowers, wasn't I? The other way that I did the leaves was to make a lighter leaf. So I added less of the moss colour, a little bit more of the limeade, and then just used the water to blend it out, and that gave me a lot lighter colour leaf. I'm doing the same here. I am actually leaving some white tips on the edges of the leaf. So now that these petals are dry, I'm coming in to do the petals that are behind the others that I've already coloured. The other way that you can do this is to heat emboss your image, and then there's really no delays, because the heat embossing gives you a well that basically holds your paints within the petals or leaves or whatever you happen to be colouring. Then you don't have to wait for each section to dry before you come and do the next one. And because I have a few flowers to colour, because I wasn't sure how many I was going to use, and I wanted to practice and have some fun colouring as we do, I just coloured the other flower that you can see there while I waited for this one to dry. I think this is a really pretty colour, this Midnight Violet. This set has a lot of bright colours in it, which is good because that gives you lots of options, because you can always make a bright colour lighter. So that gives you a lot of colours within a colour. So the centre of the flower, I just used the Warm Sunshine direct to paper again. I have waited for this to dry, and then sort of where the stamen come up from the centre, I'm just adding the moss green, and then I did actually dilute that with a bit of water as well. So now I'm going to work on my watercolour flowers. I've got a palette. These are from Altenew. There's two different sizes. This is the smaller one, and I have my other group of flowers now. And what I'm doing here is actually picking the paint up off the half pan. So I've activated it with a little bit of water. You can spray the pans first. That probably would be easier. I didn't do it that way. And I did find that my watercolor brush, the bristles stained from these paints, but the color didn't hold on them. Even though that they were stained, they didn't transfer color. I just couldn't, you know, I added so much color to these petals that I couldn't actually wash that paint stain off the end of the bristles. But it doesn't matter because the color's not transferred. Now I still wanted to achieve a vibrant colour because I wanted this to be fairly similar. So I am using the same colours here. I've got the Midnight Violet and the Dusk yet again. And oh, there's my little Lily. Her name's Lilith, and she's very shy. And you don't usually get to see her on film. She walked straight in the blue paint and then walked it all over my table. A few times, I think I might add, but I did edit that out. And what I'm finding I do with the watercolours is I try and make it vibrant too quick. And watching myself paint here now, that's what I've done. Rather than taking my time and building up layers a bit better, like doing a thinner layer of colour, waiting for it to dry, doing another layer of colour, I'm trying to go straight for the vibrant here. And these watercolors have some sort of opacity to them, so what I found was I was losing the lines and the definition of the petals and the leaves as well, but I'll show you how I get around that in a moment. It's the same sort of technique though. Basically I just painted the petals, let it dry, and then came back and added another layer. They do paint quite differently to the watercolor brush markers, and personally I find the brush markers easier to use. Maybe that's because I'm not as confident with painting, and I'm certainly don't normally use a water brush like this too, but it is convenient because I don't have to keep sort of picking water up. You have got some control, because you can squeeze the barrel and get more water out and clean the brush as well. But that's another learning curve I was doing while I was painting here as well. Now the watercolors in this set don't have the moss or limeade color. So what I actually substituted was the frayed leaf and the bamboo color. I did use the Warm Sunshine and the frayed leaf in the center of the flower there though. And I do find that the colors dry lighter, so in retrospect I probably would have used a darker green. I just wanted to try and keep a bit true to the colors that I'd used with the water brush markers. I have the coordinating dies, and when I did stamp these images out, I made sure that I stamped them out far enough apart that I can actually run them through my die cutting machine in one foul swoop. And the other thing I did was actually stamp them with my MISTI, and this is what saved me here. These are the ones done with the watercolor pans, half pans, and like I said, I did lose some definition in the petals, so by coming back in and restamping them with the black ink, I think that really made a very big difference. Alright, so I'm getting my card bases ready now, or designs ready now. I have 2 pieces of design paper from, now this is the Celebrations paper pack, and I've stamped out a couple of the leaves and flowers in sort of a random, looks fairly random, but it's going to be part of my bouquet, and a couple of sentiments. So these pieces of design paper are cut to the same size as my card front, and the sentiments are taken from the garden hydrangea set and the magnolias for her. So I did use the MISTI here because it's design paper. I found I had to actually stamp it out a couple of times to get a good coverage, but they stamped and held up really well. The black ink, the permanent black ink, is the one I used there. And all that's left to do now is to create my bouquets. I did a combination of tape runner, so adhering it direct to the card front, and also used some pop dots and foam squares just to give it a little bit of dimension. And I think they turned out similar, but there are differences in the two, but I do enjoy using both mediums. I just think I find the waterbrush markers, for me, a little bit easier, and I found their colours were a little bit more vibrant. So it looks like I need to practice more with my watercolour pan set, so you'll be seeing more of them from me. So they're my finished cards. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. I did add some sequins there as well. So looking forward to seeing you here next time. And if you've got any suggestions that you'd like to see for the take 2 from me, let me know in the comments down below. Bye.